Okay, we're talking Talent ID. We're talking talent is everywhere with Eyeball, the online video scouting platform for elite youth football. And we've got a cast of thousands. Let's go through. We've got Benjamin Balkan, the founder of Eyeball, Ben Smith, EFL Youth Development Manager, Kevin Braybrook, Professional Football Scouting Association, Marcelo Grazza, which I hope I've got right, Marcelo, Chelsea Academy, Steve Brown, Arsenal Talent ID Coordinator. And if we don't find the next Bukayo Saka or Mason Mount at the end of this call, we might as well all pack in. Hi, fellas, how are you?
Oh, good, thank you.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, good.
Really good.
Benjamin, let's start with you. Founder of Eyeball. What does Eyeball do?
Eyeball is the first video scouting platform that is solely focused on elite youth football in the bracket that we like to call emerging talent. We are the first, like I said, the first video scouting platform on that level. What we are trying to do is to bring the scouting methodologies that are normal and that are common methods in professional football and bring them to youth football in order to benefit the entire ecosystem, whether that's the youth clubs, grassroots level, and the professional clubs who can now scout using video on Eyeball.
Steve Brown from Arsenal. How far do you cast your net these days? It's not one little old fella standing on a touchline, freezing cold. I guess you're worldwide, are you?
Yeah, I would say we like to get as much coverage as we can. I mean, I look after the 6 to 16 pathway, and I think one of the key things I learned going to Arsenal is, and my boss Lee Heron, he speaks quite passionately about it, that London is a hotbed of talent, and the grassroots system is a feeder system into all the London clubs. So London's a very hot area for us, and every year there's that fight for the under-8s. For the first under-9 season where we can register them. So yeah, London's a hotbed, and with so many different communities in London now, it's a case of getting into those communities and making them part of what we do.
Marcelo at Chelsea, are you friendly with Steve, or are you sort of elbow him out on the touchline saying, hang on, he's ours, we saw him first?
Yes, it is very competitive, especially in London. And as Steve said, at that under-8 age, what you'll find is a lot of the players that come to us for a training on certain days throughout the week, they'll also go to Arsenal or other clubs. So yeah, it is very competitive. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's the kids and the parents' choices on who they decide to commit to for the following season. Kevin,
a former scout yourself, now working with the Professional Football Scouting Association, you do courses for scouts. It's an indefinable quality, but can you spot a player straight away?
Well, I think it's a challenge, of course, and I think all of us have got our own context of where we've been. I worked at Premier League clubs, I've got a pro license, you've got a coaching pedigree. But I think for sure for scouts, it's a challenge, of course. We all identify talented players when we see them, and we all look at potential and aspects of the game that we think this player's got a real good quality or potential to be a good player. And what we try and do with the PFSA is to try and have a framework and a portfolio of courses that just upskills not just people in the game, that people that want to be in the game. How do you gain that experience and that knowledge or that craft ability? Sometimes courses have to provide a platform. And what we do is try to develop a portfolio of courses where inside or outside people can come on our courses, get a great deal of knowledge, an underpinning experience of what scouting looks like, what clubs want, what a player looks like at different ages and stages, and try to make a more informed choice on players' ability rather than what it's probably always been in the past. And the game's often been a feeling, isn't it? And a subjective feeling of a player. I quite like this one, or I've got a hunch. What we try to do is try to have a far greater awareness of what that could be, not neglecting it, because that's still part of the scouting DNA, but actually having a slightly more informed ability to recognise good players and good teams.
Ben, how does define your role, EFL Youth Development Manager? Are you finding talent, or are you looking after talent?
Main bulk of our role is to support the clubs. So we'll support the clubs through several areas, talent ID being one of them, leadership and management, return on investment, finance, coaching programs, player care, and performance support. When it comes to the talent ID, Our role is to support the clubs through different methods of trying to recruit players, but also, capturing the data that allows that player to transition either from grassroots to professional football into the academies, or from another academy into another academy. So those differences and those challenges are key in order to let the player settle, let the family settle, and let them thrive in a new environment.
Steve, what's the criteria when you see a player? You say, what was it, 8 to 16? 8 seems to me awfully young still. What's your criteria?
Well, we just the thing is, the younger they are, the harder I believe it is to select that player. But we work off the 4 pillars at Arsenal, and we try and select them around those characteristics that sit within those pillars. So, effective, efficient movers. Do they move well? And we know the importance of movement, especially from how schooling's changed around stuff like PE from when we were younger. So there's all sorts of aspects of that. Kids don't climb trees and do all those things we used to do as youngsters. So actually looking at them as movers, and there's been no secret around the cage football in London and all that sort of stuff at the minute. So London creates its own methods of development of players with what's going on around London, in the different communities. But I think that's massive to the growth of the game across the country. That I look at the levels, and I look at some of the players who are now at World Cups as we speak. Those players 10 years ago, the EPP has been in 10 years now. So the game's moved forward massively, technically and tactically for the English game. It wasn't that long ago people were always talking about we don't produce players like the foreigners. I think that's something we rarely hear now.
Martello, how do you ensure they don't slip through the net, the talented kids?
Well, it's our job to provide a really good environment for them, where the kids feel comfortable to express themselves, a good learning environment, and ultimately the experience we provide has to be a really positive one. And we can show them there is a pathway here at this club, and whatever journey they go through is going to enrich, their life and their life experiences on and off the pitch. But again, ultimately, it is the kids and the parents' choices. It's just our job to make sure we do everything on our part to make sure they understand. It will be a terrific choice, and obviously we would like for us to be part of their journey, and vice versa.
Benjamin, you say that its talent is everywhere. How do you mean by that? Tell us about what you're sticking cameras at grounds and at places that maybe that traditionally that haven't been exposed to professional scouts.
I'll say our motto "talent is everywhere" is more of a you could call it a motto that it doesn't matter where you're from, and every region of the world has talented players, and the ultimate goal of Eyeball is to be in every single country in this world. However, in our expansion strategy, we do start and we do implement Eyeball and our camera systems in the countries where there's the highest chance and the highest record of players coming through. You take the example of France, the region around Paris, similar to what Steve was saying with London, I believe. The amount of players is just, because of pure demographics, is just insane. And you've got a higher chance by partnering up with 20 clubs or 50 clubs in the suburbs of Paris of finding, more players than, maybe doing it in another country. However, that doesn't mean that another football developing country doesn't have talent. And we want to make it easier and more efficient for clubs all over the planet to find them players without being restricted to time and geography. We're trying to remove that barrier.
Ben, young players looked after. Steve's talking about a 10-year development, how it's all changed. Are they looked after a lot better these days?
Yeah, for me, I think the whole reforms around the academy system in England's been a wonderful thing for everybody involved. From sports science to coaches. I mean, the players' journeys now are more specific, very much like school. So it is an education. It is something where they're learning, and the support that's wrapped around them nowadays in their development is incredible. It's a testament to the Premier League and the EFL and the FA for implementing things that has really modernised our game and youth development.
Is that right, Ben? Are you looking after players a lot better these days?
Yeah, I think Steve's right. I think, football's evolved. It's not a case of, well, we did it X amount of years ago, that's how it's always been. Football's changed now. We've looked at sports from outside of football. We've tried to capture good practice rather than just looking inside at what we do. And I think that in terms of when you're talking about slipping through the net earlier with Marcello, the evolution of the games program now has changed. So we're not necessarily looking at 18-year-olds now that can necessarily go straight into a first team. If you were to make the comparison with education, you're then asking an A-level student to go and compete at a degree level in university, and that's not really that realistic. So by widening that development pathway, extending it, we're able to keep players in the building longer, give them that education, give them that development, so that they can then go on to have a career, either within their club or other clubs. I think the other thing is how you measure success, and success that football and Steve said there. Success doesn't have to be getting on the first team pitch. Success can be, in other ways, such as qualifying, education. So many young players now are getting their coaching badges and going back into clubs and working as coaches. We've got some clubs where ex-scholars are now head of recruitment. They're doing the scouting. They're going out, they're finding the players. They know what to look for. And I think football's done that through its involvement in bringing players through and giving them a bit of a 360 package.
Kevin, can anybody be a scout?
Look, I think anything can be trained, anything can be guided. I think for sure, we've all got different experiences, different contexts, and sometimes our scouting eye is imparted by our football background, our knowledge, our games we've been to, our coaching badges. But what we do try to say to people is, look, everybody deserves an opportunity to be engaged in the game. And if that means that somebody wants to be a coach or a scout, and if it's a scouting role, then our job is to support them with courses that can facilitate that. Courses that are innovative, creative, but meet the modern day game. That's talent ID, scouting, recruitment, performance analysis, opposition. The game is evolving.
We're talking talent is everywhere in conjunction with eyeball. Benjamin, if Steve or Marcelo is looking at eyeball, what kind of, apart from video, I mean, can you narrow things down to this kid's got a great left foot, or he's good defensively, or he's working hard, etc., etc. What are the parameters of eyeball?
There's different ways of. It's a good question. There's different ways of browsing through the platform. It's a searchable database. So initially, what you can do is type in any name that comes through your desk and try and see if you can find any video. In addition to the video, you can also look at clips of players, so you can watch player action videos. We purposely don't call them highlight videos because it's got literally every touch of a ball inside a specific game. Also the bad passes and the shots not on target, which is also a good indication in scouting, of course. We're very, very big on developing data on players, being able to analyze for midfielder and just have a look at how many completed successful passes did he have in that game, and how many of them passes were passes forward, how many were backwards, how many were labeled as key passes. And you can also do a traditional filter and saying, hey, I'm looking for players born in 2010 and I want to look at left-footed players in that specific area, or who are, this tall already at a specific age, and you can narrow down your research. Now, the goal first is to be able to combine that with data. So combine a specific profile you're looking for with specific qualities in terms of maybe goal scoring ability or flair or number of average take-ons per game or successful passes, with the goal of making your research more and more efficient in order to find what you might be looking for.
Marcelo, how much do you use data in the academy?
It's become really popular over the recent years, with performance analysis coming through, and I'm sure the recruitment department also using it in terms of, like Benjamin says, scouting players through the use of data. As coaches, obviously we try and stick to the coaching, but yes, in the academies there will be performance analysts who will go through games with players and highlight specific areas they need to improve, and talk to them about the data side as well. It's just part of the program, and again used to aid with their development.
Kevin, is data taught by you? The importance
Yes, it
of
is. Across our courses, I think it's because of the nature of the industry and also life. We've gone through a terrible situation, haven't we? So it's the game is different, and I think because of that, we have to make sure the courses are fit for purpose. So we have to upskill everybody and create some knowledge around use of software, data analytics, how the role of analysis kind of imparts knowledge on your decision making and judgment. And that can lead on to whether that's talent ID, opposition scouting, the role of the individual scout, but you're trying to kind of encompass an objective knowledge alongside subjective knowledge. And I think what we try to do on the courses is identify that there's many roles within the game, and and understanding that the opportunities are great in the game in a minute, but to understand the cutting edge of what's now relevant, data, metrics, numbers that people are now referencing in at the elite performance. We have to make sure that people that go through courses understand what those metrics look like, and those words, the terminology, how it's looked and how it's applied. And I think it's, Steve mentioned how, the eyes and ears is still for sure critical to watching players. But I think also there is a new breed of younger data analytics, and people more aware of use of performance analysis that has to be part of the scouts role as well. I think upskilling those is key.
Marcelo, it fascinates me that is there an age cut-off where Chelsea go, no, he's too old, we're not looking at him? We talked at the very beginning, maybe age 8 you're going into an academy. Will Chelsea look at anybody, or I'm talking sort of teenagers or whatever, or is there, no, he's too old?
No, I think the door will always be open for up and coming and emerging talent. There's specific programs that we could place players of certain ages where they could go and have a look, and again the scouting department make sure they cover those specific age groups, like you said, the 16s, 17s. So I don't think the door will be closed, because you never know. Talent is everywhere, so it's important that we can provide a pathway for those players at those ages, and just make sure we have full coverage of all ages across London and across all different areas as well.
Is that the same at Arsenal?
Yeah, football's for everyone, and those opportunities are there, and that pathway and our door is always open for talents. I mean, by the time you get to 16, a player coming out of grassroots into a Cat 1 academy system is pretty rare, really rare, because actually I think the gap is quite vast between the two different forms of football. But, what I will say, I mean, last year we did find one who did come out of grassroots, who did get a scholarship. So, that tells you that it is still possible. There are still one or two out there that can still come in. And what you probably find, those ones who sometimes come into the system later have that real quick, steep upward learning, and sort of the system really pushes them through quickly. So, yeah, as Marcelo says, the door's always open. The door's always open for talent to come into the system, and it's for us to to find them and nurture that and give it the best opportunity of becoming a top professional footballer.
Benjamin, what ages is Eyeball looking at?
Depends on the countries. In most countries, we start under 11s, under 10s, under 11s, and go all the way up to under 19s. And it depends what the system is like. For example, in France, the first contracts you can sign are 15 years old, right? And in the UK, we know it's different. If the day we're going to implement Eyeball in the UK and look at grassroots clubs in London, we know that we will need to start very, very early, because that's when clubs start identifying players. On the opposite side, I was using France as an example. The first, you can sign pre-contracts at 12, 13, not before. Nobody is really scouting at under 9s, under 8s. So for us, it's all about adapting. When we implement our camera systems in academies in West Africa, for instance, we only start filming at under 17s, under 18s, because due to FIFA regulations, of course, the players can only move to Europe when they're 18. So there's no point in starting to watch a player when he is 8, right? And he probably won't be enrolled in the best football programs at that age. So it's all about adaptation to the market.
Kevin, is scouting, or is it different from country to country?
Look, it's absolutely context related, isn't it? We're talking about young players there and our players missing out. Clubs, budgets, the leagues they're playing in, the type of philosophy, the manager's style, the DNA of the club, their approach to player development or a must-win environment. There's lots of context to relate to whether players are going to be identified, recruited, worked, and signed or not. And I think clubs, depending on countries, have different budgets, different leagues, different expectations. And Steve mentioned, the London area is a fantastic hotbed, as is Northwest. If you go around the northwest of the country, a great area again. So it's always going to be relevant to where you're based and the club and the DNA of where you're, what you're underpinned by.
I'm from the northwest. I can't believe they missed me. I've got to be honest with you, Kev. Something went wrong with the scouting system somewhere. Ben, I just wonder if one of the most difficult, and I guess it still is, the most difficult aspect of a young player's journey is when somebody says, sorry, no.
Yeah, I think, we put a huge amount of time and effort into identifying players, signing players. And, perhaps we need to invest as much time and resources into when we release a player. That again, we've spoken about the transition of a player coming into a football club. What's the transition like leaving the football club? There's a huge amount now going on in player care. There's full-time player care staff at every football club now. There's exit strategies for all the different age groups. And then there's a higher focus on the exit strategies of those leaving at under 16 and under 18. That allows them to transition either to other roles within football, might be transitioning into another sport, because the skills and the education that they've had through academy football in this country is so huge, it's vast. When you think about discipline, nutrition, working as part of a team, dealing with success, dealing with failure, managing injury, managing that life football balance is a real skill that a lot of peers their own age that they've grown up with don't have that environment that they've thrived in. So there's a lot of transition skills that these boys have, and we try and highlight that to the players, to the parents, and then what their next steps will be after that.
Benjamin, where are you? Which countries are you in? Where's Eyeball?
Eyeball is in France, in all 5 countries in Scandinavia. So that'd be Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, Finland, and Norway. We are present in West Africa as well. Ghana, Ivory Coast, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Mali. And we just entered the UK with an expansion to Northern Ireland, which, following a lot of feedback from clubs in the UK, has become a very important market with Brexit and a ton of new regulation hindering international scouting at emerging talent level, with point system and a lot of different rules that are arguably hindering international recruitment at that age. We have an expansion planned to Belgium, Holland, and Spain in the first quarter of 2023. And the second quarter of next year will be Eastern Europe. And we're also looking at different ways of entering the UK, whether that's a coverage of the London area or Scotland as well is an interesting market that has come into our ears more than once. And then, of course, after that will come a very important one in football, which is called South America. And with we've got a strategic partnership with clubs like Benfica, who have a tremendous network down there, and who can guide us to who are the best talent manufacturers in specific countries. And we're looking to do that as fast as we can, really.
Steve, everybody keeps saying the bubble's going to burst. The Premier League downwards, got a World Cup on it. It's never been so popular worldwide. Are you enthusiastic? Are you optimistic about what you're seeing, talent ID-wise?
As much as we're producing it, it's finding its way somewhere that even some of the non-league clubs, I mean, you look at the conference is now, majority of the clubs in there are full-time. So it's just a matter of time before that talent comes back in somewhere. I think if we're talking in 10 years' time and we're talking about the players around, they'll all have come through some sort of development system or academy system or a club. I'll just look at the stuff around the World Cup, and I hear stories, and I didn't realise how many players had started at either Chelsea or Arsenal. Those are the common sort of things. He came in here a few years ago. Well, he was at Chelsea. He started out at Chelsea. He was in. So they've a lot of the players nowadays you're talking about started somewhere and will come through some development program at the professional clubs. I think there's so much talent around that. And a lot of clubs with youth programs, the players are having so much good coaching now that's naturally going to raise the talent right across the board.
Ben, the Premier League seems to be everything. It's judged worldwide. It's a massive success. Are you happy that there's talent in the EFL at youth level that will come through to get to the very top of the game?
Yeah, there's an article last week. 23 of the 26 players selected for England in one way or another started in the EFL, whether it be through their academies or through playing in the cup competitions with their own clubs or whilst on loan in the EFL. So the EFL, what we have in this country is so unique. We have over 100 professional football clubs in this country in a really short, small area. It's really compact. We don't have that many one or two team cities. You go to Rome, you go to Madrid. There's two teams in those cities. You go to London, there's 18 teams that operate out of London. We've never had, more clubs with more staff, like what Kevin said, that are getting really, really good at their job. And it's more multidisciplinary. It's not just a case now of the scout going out and identifying the player. More and more different departments within the club, whether it be performance support, psychology, education, everyone's having an input now into that player and their journey through the club. So, yeah, EFL, we've got so much talent coming through, and we've actually got more players moving from a registration point of view from Category 3 to Category 1. So there's more Category 1 clubs now identifying talent at 13, 14, 15, 16 in the EFL clubs that are then buying those registrations and taking them into theirs.
Benjamin, have you had success as Eyeball discovered players?
We believe that last season, when the season 21-22 ended, that in excess of 100 players benefited from Eyeball in terms of the recruitment process of a club, whether that shortened the time frame from discovery to recruitment or led to identification of a player up front. And we're very proud of that, and we of course believe that this season, being our first real season in more than 10 markets, will completely explode that number, and that's what we're here for.
Fellas, all of you, thanks very much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's often difficult with 5 people on Zoom, but you've done brilliantly. Thanks a lot. Really, Good stuff.
Thanks to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks, Sam.
Take
Cheers,
care.
Rob.
See you guys.